Today is Sunday, June 21st, 2026. Happy Father's Day. A lot has happened since the last episode at the end of March. Let's jump right into it. The embryo transfer. This happened on Thursday, May 28th in Dallas at my clinic. I wasn't there. It took only about 30 minutes. I decided it wasn't the right time to meet my gestational carrier and didn't want to jinx anything. But then I realized that I might not meet her until she's in the delivery room, because between now and then, there is no other opportunity. She is never going back to Dallas since her monitoring is done locally, and I'm never going back to Dallas either. In the meantime, around the middle of May, she needed more Lupron, so that was another $583. And then on June 17th, she needed more of everything else, which was another $420. I haven't talked about this in any detail, but she is on certain drugs until August, which seems strange to me. The calendar started in mid-April and ran 2.5 months to the end of June, but there are emails from the clinic at key steps that advise her to continue specific drugs until August, so she doesn't stop all of the drugs even if she's pregnant. The pregnancy tests. After the transfer, which was day 0, on days 8 and 10, she went to her local clinic for pregnancy tests. It's a blood test for HCG, which stands for human chorionic gonadotropin. It's a hormone produced by cells that become the placenta after an embryo implants into the uterine lining. They call these readings betas. In early pregnancy, HCG serves several additional functions, including the following. It signals that implantation has occurred. It supports the corpus luteum, a structure in the ovary, so it continues producing progesterone. It helps maintain the uterine environment needed for the pregnancy. And last but not least, it is the hormone detected by home pregnancy tests and fertility clinic blood tests. How far along is she? You take the age of the embryo, in my case, 5 days. Obstetric dating adds 14 days to this. That totals to 19 days. You then add the number of days from the transfer date to the first pregnancy test. In my case, this was 11 days, which means when the first pregnancy test was done, she was already 30 days pregnant, which is 4 weeks and 2 days. What does this mean in practical terms? It means I don't have 9 months to prepare. I have only 8 months. They even gave me a due date of February 13th, 2027. How unlucky is that number during the month whose days fluctuate based on leap years? The clock is really ticking now, and I can't slow it down. I couldn't wait and spill the beans to everyone, including on social media. And then I realized this might not have been the right thing to do. So I asked ChatGPT. It said among IVF pregnancies, there are 3 common approaches. Number 1, conservative. You wait until a heartbeat is confirmed and possibly multiple ultrasounds. Number 2 is the moderate approach, which means you tell your family and everyone else after strong betas and a good first ultrasound. And then open is when you tell people immediately after a positive beta. That's what I did. There is no right answer. I decided to be less open going forward because you never know what's going to happen, and no one wants to have to retract good news and deliver bad news. I also asked ChatGPT, what is the purpose of 2 pregnancy tests 2 days apart? The first HCG test answers the question, did implantation occur and is the pregnancy producing HCG? The second beta answers a different question. Is the pregnancy developing in a way that is consistent with an early viable pregnancy? In a healthy early pregnancy, HCG typically rises rapidly. The traditional rule of thumb is that it should approximately double every 48 to 72 hours during the earliest weeks. In reality, fertility clinics are often looking for at least about a 53% increase in 48 hours. Our first number was 277, which is off the charts. On June 8th, I crossed an important milestone. Embryo transferred, implementation occurred, and HCG production was underway. 48 hours later, the second beta was 683.9. It increased about 147%, but there's no guarantee. This result does not prove that everything will be normal from here on out, but it does substantially reduce the concern about a biochemical pregnancy, which is a very early pregnancy loss after implementation, but before anything is visible on ultrasound. And it's reassuring evidence that implantation occurred and that the trophoblastic cells, otherwise known as the future placenta, are actively developing. At this stage, the focus typically shifts away from HCG and toward ultrasound findings over the next couple of weeks. Let's talk about ultrasounds. My 2 ultrasounds will be June 29th and July 10th. These start a week from tomorrow. However, we have already had an unplanned ultrasound. I got a text on June 17th from my gestational carrier exactly 1 week after the second beta test. She had had severe abdominal pains with bleeding and had to go to the ER. They did a vaginal ultrasound and determined she had a subchorionic hemorrhage, which is pretty common with embryo transfers. And guess what? I thought she was joking. They saw twins. So I kind of flipped out because I hadn't planned on this, but it's equally exciting. When a couple wants twins, they will typically transfer 2 embryos and hope that they both take. If so, they will have fraternal twins. I transferred only 1 embryo, but apparently there is a 1 to 3% chance of the single embryo splitting into 2, which results in identical twins. I didn't announce this to the world because I didn't want to jump the gun. I did tell my family and close friends, but then I broke my own rule by including twins in my Father's Day social media posts. Twins, really? Of course, I began asking ChatGPT all kinds of questions, and I learned something new. Even with identical twins, there are 3 types of configurations. They have to do with the placenta and amniotic sacs, and here they are. Diamniotic, otherwise known as DD, 2 placentas and 2 amniotic sacs. This is the lowest risk twin configuration. Monochorionic diamniotic, known as MODY, 1 placenta shared by both babies, but separate amniotic sacs. This is the most common type after a late embryo split. It requires close monitoring. And monochorionic monoamniotic, known as MOMO, 1 placenta and 1 amniotic sac. This is uncommon and considered high risk. So I'm hoping and praying for DD twins, since that is the lowest risk configuration. I want 2 placentas and 2 amniotic sacs. Will the June 29th ultrasound answer the twin question? Most likely, yes. At approximately 7 weeks gestation, the sonographer should generally be able to determine singleton or twins, number of gestational sacs, number of fetal poles, whether both embryos have cardiac activity, and whether the twins appear monochorionic or dichorionic, in other words, 1 or 2 placentas. Why is the July 10th ultrasound also important? This puts the pregnancy at approximately 8 weeks, 4 days. That scan often provides confirmation of what was suspected at the earlier scan. By then, they can usually assess the growth of both embryos, crown rump length measurements. I have no idea what that is, except it sounds like the length from head to butt. Whether both twins are growing similarly, and chorionicity and amnionicity with greater confidence. Again, referring to the number of placentas and amniotic sacs, respectively. Additional costs? Yes, I reviewed my retainer agreement with my surrogacy agency. No additional fees there, but my surrogacy contract with my gestational carrier says I have to pay a $15,000 twins fee and a few other things totaling about $2,500 with a total additional cost of about $17,500. I had pegged my total journey cost at just over $200,000 before this, and now we're looking at closer to $220,000. To summarize, I didn't expect the first transfer to take, but it did. Once that happens, you want high HCG counts on both the first and second tests, in a perfect world doubling. And then the ultrasounds will confirm a heartbeat at about 7 weeks. You may end up with twins. I will not know for sure for a few more weeks. If that turns out to be the case, I'll have tons of additional research to do and planning for February 2027, since I had planned on just 1 child per pregnancy. This also throws a wrench into my family plans because I wanted a girl and a boy in that order. If I have 2 girls, I have no idea if I'll ever try again for a boy. I still have 5 embryos left. Until next time, wish me the best on my unexpected twin girls, whom I will likely name Haley and Harper. And thanks for watching.